Excited to introduce him. I've been working with Jacques for the last 6 months now since I joined Funding Circle. He's got about 5 years under his belt in product, and we've connected over a shared passion for continuous discovery. So I'm really happy to introduce him and to hear what he's going to tell us about doing continuous discovery with internal teams. Thank you, Jacques.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam. So yeah, hi everyone, my name's Jack. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go through a bit of continuous discovery with internal teams and how I came to do a bit of finding out about continuous discovery was I started with these problems, which I think will be familiar to a number of people here. So starting at Funding Circle, had a bit of a lack of domain knowledge about the area, as well as my engineering team. They'd just been spun up, so we were all like tasked with this domain that we needed to resolve, but limited understanding. On the back of that, we had to build roadmaps based on that understanding. We've got time to deliver. We have to give that to the stakeholders in the business, and we have to build it with a lack of knowledge. It also means that we end up building roadmaps based on like what the senior stakeholders are shouting about. So we need this needs to be done, this is the next thing, this is the most important thing, really, rather than like understanding what the problems are in the area. And then once you've got that roadmap that's been basically built by the senior stakeholders, it's then a race against time to do discovery, getting the requirements together, trying to understand what the hell it is that this item is that we've asked for and how we're going to build it. So I decided something needed to change, and the best way to go about that, I did a bit of research on continuous discovery. Yeah, I'm sure some of this will be familiar in terms of you've read the Teresa Torres book. So, she's wrote a book on continuous discovery, so this is what they define as continuous discovery. At a minimum, weekly touch points with customers by the team building the product, where they conduct small research activities in pursuit of a desired outcome. So, what are those small activities, I hear you say? Well, that just forms a part of customer interviews, essentially. So, similar to what Josh was speaking about before, but a slightly different approach to them. So what I like to do is get the person on the call to tell me a story, basically. I'll start by setting the scene. So my domain that I work in is our CRL domain, which is our collections, recoveries and litigation. So essentially, when we've had borrowers that haven't been able to pay, these are the people that are on the phone calling, chasing them to pay us back. So I usually start with, tell me about the borrower that you spoke to today. Ask them to share their screen, go through the story, tell me about what their problems were, like what was the issues they were trying to resolve with the customer. Try and keep any questions towards the end, try and get them to direct that story. And as I go, I'll be making notes. I'll show that in a second. And the idea behind that is you're trying to get them away from talking about generalizations. So rather than being like, oh, well, usually I do this, or normally I do this, they're talking about specific examples. So you can then build up a picture of like what's actually going on rather than what they think is going on. And I think like one of the most important things about it is you won't always get what you want out of it. It's not about you directing them and asking them about specific issues that are in there. It's about them telling you about that person they spoke to, and then you taking out that information and dissecting what you think is most important from there. In terms of who, so your classic kind of product trio, although I have to say that's not always worked for me. Working with internal teams, like we don't have designers that would give us the time to be able to do it. They're working on other priorities, let's say. So again, that resource is difficult. And EMs, so what I've found is quite useful is, like Josh said, getting one of the developers on. So what I tend to do is like book it in on rotation so that each week we have a different developer on, so that they all get to also like build up their domain knowledge at the same time. I do it weekly, so again, like have that call booked in every week for forever, and then the managers of that department, they're responsible for making sure that there's one of their direct reports that are on the call, so it's not always on me. So we always have that like constant stream of people to speak to, getting different experiences. Your internal users, I think, is the easiest place to start this kind of thing. You know what you can see their diaries, you can see when you can speak to the people that they're working for, make sure that it's getting the attention that it needs, and also you keep it brief. So I just have it in for half an hour, on a Monday afternoon. It's like easy. It's not too difficult for someone to do. It's not a lot of time out of someone's day or week, especially when it's just like one person in a team of 30. It's not like it's really onerous, so it's like easy for them to agree to it rather than like being like a time chunk out of their day. In terms of like then when I go, so again like this template, I find it everywhere, but I found it really useful. And it's a great way to like make notes as you go. So I'm sure most people here have got like Miro or FigJam, something like that. I put them all in there, make all my notes, I put post-its in each of those sections. Haven't had that many memorable quotes, I have to say. I don't put the photos on there, but the insights and opportunities, like great way to build that up. And then you can put them all on your opportunity tree or like straight onto your backlog to do a bit more investigation and maybe like dig deeper into that at a later date. But over time, you start building up like this list of opportunities that you can map out. It's also like, super easy to do. So it's like more because you're creating that habit, you're more likely to do it over time when you're building up that area. So yeah, in terms of like top tips, I would say get the senior stakeholders on board. I think it's like having this kind of like artifact's really good to then be able to show people afterwards. Like it's easy to share around the engineers, like we keep it in a shared folder so everyone can like dip in and look whenever they want. So I put it on the Slack channel afterwards so that even though there's only been one engineer on the call, they can easily see all the information that we got out of that call as well. It's also like good when you're then mapping them back onto that opportunity solution tree to have like something to share with the senior stakeholders so that they can see that the time isn't being wasted, that there's like something coming out of it. Sometimes they'll like see things that like they didn't even know was a problem. And they'd be like, oh, I didn't realise, that's great. Speak to the right people, obviously super important. You need to think about whose problem you're trying to solve. So I find it quite good to be able to not only find it for internal users, but then because they're speaking about a borrower that they spoke to, it's a great way to understand what also the problems are for external users, and that helps me like feed into other ideas that I might put on the backlog for our like customer-facing teams. Obviously stick to it. It takes time to form a habit. Again, I think because it's like quite a small and regular thing, you just build it up over time. And now people just see it as like a regular meeting that's going to go in the diary, so it's really easy to like get it going. And doing that by booking in diaries, having it at a regular spot and putting onus on the stakeholders to make sure that the people go means that you're not like having to chase people, means that people think it's important, but it's like always there. It makes it way easier to keep up with. As I said before, be open with your results. Like there's nothing to hide there. It's all like good information for everyone. It's good for the senior management to do. It's they might hear things on when they're doing call monitoring, but they might not have noticed the same things. It's like I'm sure everyone's seen a really common thing for senior stakeholders to say, "Oh, but I just want it to do this," or "This button just needs to go here," or "This problem would be resolved if you just did this for us." But you're building up your own way of evidence to be able to combat that and giving you control over your own backlogs. Don't expect every session to unearth something. Because it's like a habit, you're not going through looking for something specific. You're essentially like, it's that consistency that's going to get you the results rather than necessarily like honing in on individual items. And finally, like find what works for you. Like there's loads of books and things out there with like templates or like processes that's like the kind of everyone says you should follow, but ultimately like it's down to you, whatever works for you. And I've found that make it at least starting, then you can develop it and iterate from there. Classic product option. That's it.